Welcome to I Used to Be Fun, the podcast about remembering who you were before life got so serious. I'm Anne-Marie Boyle, author, creativity instigator, and recovering overachiever. And each week, we explore how reconnecting to creativity and play helps us feel more alive, inspired, and like ourselves again. So set down the to-do list, grab a cup of coffee, and let's go find some fun. Welcome, everyone, to our very first play date on I Used to Be Fun. This is where the good stuff is going to happen, because the play date episodes are where I get to sit down with real women, not influencers, not celebrities, just smart, funny, creative women who are still figuring it out, same as the rest of us. And honestly, I cannot think of a better person to kick this off with, both because she's been a friend for over 15 years, and I know she'll roll with the punches if I encounter some speed bumps in this first guest episode. Kim and I actually met in 2010, I believe, when I hired her and her then partner to build a website for me. So she has literally been supporting my dreams for a very long time, which makes her the perfect first ever guest. While Kim still creates websites for coaches, healers, and spiritual entrepreneurs, she is also the creator of Step Into Your Magic, a sacred path that guides women back to themselves through cyclical wisdom, walking in sacred rhythm, and intentional daily practice. Kim works with women who sense that something more exists. Women who are tired of living by everyone else's rules and are finally ready to return to their own truth. A very similar ethos to what this podcast is all about. She also builds spaces where women can shed outdated conditioning, reclaim their sovereignty, and live with greater meaning, authenticity, joy, and yes, magic. And when she's not holding space, you'll find her walking in nature, reading something soul-stirring, or crafting ritual under the moonlight. Or talking on Zoom with me. That seems to happen a lot.
Yes.
And while most of my guests will be regular women just like you and me, I'm always going to take a second to introduce them properly, because the women coming on the show have whole worlds inside them. And a quick introduction is my way of honoring that before we dive in. So, Kim Turcotte, welcome to I Used to Be Fun.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I feel very honored to be the first guest.
I'm just going to dive right in, and we're going to start with a bit of a temperature check. So
Okay.
I want to know, do you consider yourself someone who plays?
I consider myself someone who's trying to play. I think I have realized, especially through many conversations with you, that as much as I want to play and I love the idea of playing, I've also forgotten how to play. And I'm not even sure what play looks like at this stage of my life. So I'm really excited about today's conversation, because I think not only is it going to be, beneficial for someone listening, but I think it's going to help me too.
Well, that's the goal, right? Help
Yeah.
me too. I said in my introduction to the podcast that I'm doing this because I need to reclaim my fun too. And so many women around our age are looking at that very same thing, which is, I
Yes.
hope, what becomes really beneficial about this podcast. So if you're trying to work on play, let's look at the other angle. And do you then claim the word creative?
Yes. I claim that, and I say that creative looks a lot different for everybody. And so what is creative for me, like doing ritual under the moonlight, that's creativity for me. That's a lot of what creativity looks like for me. Lighting a candle and, I don't know, like the magical stuff feels very creative for me.
I'm sure we'll get into this, but this is something that when I talk about this subject, it's so much easier for people to hold on to the word creative, particularly those of us that are entrepreneurs. We understand that creating a business is actually a creative act. A little bit
Yes.
harder sometimes when I'm talking to somebody who maybe is an accountant or, works in a more structured type of field. But
Yes.
I just find it fascinating that we can claim creative, but play is so much harder. So we will get into that.
Yes.
So let's talk about what's bringing you joy right now. And just the small, silly stuff, I think, is important to focus on, not the bigger things.
So right now, the things that are bringing me joy are the definitely the change in weather and being out in nature and just, seeing the birds again, like lots of birds are around and just those simple things can bring me so much joy. And my secret pleasure, dancing around my apartment with the music blasting. Like that brings me joy. And sometimes I feel like I restrain myself from that because I think as a kid I was probably taught, oh my God, stop being so wild or stop being so acting so crazy. But that's something that really brings me joy to be able to just let go and just follow the music. Like it's been something I've been trying to do more.
Which is the very definition of play, right? So it's really
Yeah.
interesting that you're doing that and really not calling it play. But I want to come back to something else. You mentioned
Okay.
you doing some things like this when you were a kid. So I want to know, what did play look like for you as a kid?
Spent a lot of time outdoors. I was very fortunate to live on this little side street that had lots of woods in the back of my house, and we had a really big yard. And so my sister and I and the kids next door, we had a fort in the woods and we played in the woods and in nature a lot. It's funny because I always joke about it and say that when we played, I was the teacher, my sister always played the mom. We would play this whole society where my sister would be the mom and have the kids and the dolls, We'd had this little kitchen set and everything in our little fort area. And then on the other side, we had a blackboard and a desk, and I was the teacher. And her kids would go to school, and I'd be the teacher. And so that was play for me.
And that's kind of exactly where you ended up. Your sister is the mom and you are the teacher,
I
right?
know
So
it's kind of wild when I think about that. I'm like, even my child self knew who I was. And I think I
and
lost that over the years.
you're testing it, right? That's what play is for children, is doing something with no purpose or no perceived outcome, but they are teaching themselves, they're learning about themselves, they're testing their boundaries and so forth. And something that I think we could bring into our adult life in a much more full way, in allowing ourselves, like whether it is to try something and fail or to do something that we're told as kids we weren't good at, and pushing against that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about that art teacher in my mind who told me I wasn't any good at art, and now I'm coming back to it in my mid 50s. And so I think that moving through the world in that play like manner allows us to really re experience that.
I think that's an interesting point because when I think about that, one of the things that I think is so amazing about children is that as children, we're not worried what people think.
Oh,
We're just in the moment. I think back, I remember years ago, I saw this meme on social media, and it was a young girl, probably around 9 or 10, and she was just soaking wet, splashing in a puddle. The caption was something like, "Remember this little girl?" And like, I'm going to get emotional, but like, I remembered her in that moment. And I thought, my God, how long has it been since I just let that wild abandon take over and not worry about what the outcome was going to be?
I don't even know the word for it, but it's sucked out of us as we age. We're told that
Yes.
that's not what adults do. It isn't even so much about, yes, we have to pay the bills. We need to go to work. We need to, we just had a foot of snow over the weekend. We need to shovel out. We need to do those
Right.
things. But that isn't, I think, what takes it away from us. I think it's culture telling us that play is meant only for children. And the sad thing is, play does so much neurologically for us, and
Yep.
opening new pathways and so forth, that when we leave it behind, we leave behind so much potential as well.
Yes. Yes. I totally
So
agree.
we've been dancing around this. When do you think that shift happens? If you feel like maybe you stopped playing, do you think there was a moment you stopped playing, or do you think it just quietly evaporated over time? What do you think?
For me, there was actually a clear moment. And so when I was growing up, my mom, my parents got divorced when I was 6. And My mom was a single mom after that, and my sister and I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, right? Because my mom worked.
Right.
And at 10, my grandmother, who I was very close to, suffered a massive stroke. And after that, we didn't stay at my grandmother's anymore. We were, I mean, this would be child abuse these days, I think, but I was 10, my sister was almost 8, and we went home after school after that. And then I kind of became the caregiver. I thought it was so exciting to be able to learn how to start, getting vegetables ready for dinner because I got to, be the responsible one. But that did damage too. I was forced to grow up at that point. And so I did stop playing. I think that's where it happened for me. I think I had to grow up and I just didn't have a lot of space for play anymore.
It's really interesting because had you been in the kitchen with a parent or a caregiver and cutting vegetables with them, that's almost play. But when it becomes a must instead of a want, it
Yes.
stops being play. And, I think a lot of us have had an experience throughout life where we were asked to be an adult, whether it was a situation where it was about, well, you're this age now, you don't behave like that anymore, or
Right.
something much more dramatic, like you were talking about, that really asks us to move into something. And when you're caring for another person, it wasn't just you at home. Like you were now not only responsible for dinner, but also responsible for your sister. And you
Yes.
understood the pressures your mother was under as a single parent. And
Yep.
so that does shape us. I never want to belittle any situation that when we're asked as children to step into adult roles, that those things happened because they have to happen, because it's just the way life is. It's just the idea of how can we then get back to some of what we've missed, or even go back in our brain and rethink, okay, maybe that was play. Maybe cutting vegetables was play. Maybe I
Right.
just told myself it wasn't because I was playing grown up. And that, in a way, you just said was kind of fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, in the
Right.
beginning, I'm sure it got old after a while, but in the
Yes.
beginning, it was that way.
Well, it's
So,
funny because I think about my mom at that time, right? And I think I just wanted to be what she needed me to be, right?
yes.
And isn't that how we get conditioned out of so many of the wonderful things that we are as children, right? Like we feel the need to be what someone else needs us to be. And, I think that's what happened. Like you said, it was fun in the beginning, but then it became work.
And I'm hoping that one of the things that comes out of this podcast is we all figure out how to find the play and the joy inside the quote unquote work, because I do think that it's there. It's just a matter of, it's really hard when something feels like drudgery or responsibility you didn't ask for or things like that. And as a child, you can't bifurcate those two things. You didn't have the prefrontal cortex, shall we say,
Right.
to to pull out like, oh, I can make this fun somehow. You might have been able to say, I could make this fun for Erica, for your sister,
Yes.
but you probably didn't have the ability to make it fun for you, which is why I think it's even more important that we're coming back to it in our
Well,
midlife.
the other thing too that I'm thinking about is that honestly, my mother didn't have fun. She didn't model it for me. I'm just looking back on this now and it's coming to me like when I was playing the role of mommy, right, of
Right.
adult, I had no reference for a mommy who played. My mom didn't play. I mean, I literally can count a handful of times where my mother actually sat down and played with my sister and I. She played jacks with us. And I actually bought a set of jacks a couple of years ago because for this very reason, to bring play back, because it was one of the things that my mother was involved in with me as far as play goes, because she was the jacks champion when she was a kid. And it was a big thing for her to play with my sister and I because she never did it, you know?
I just think that is what happened to a lot of us, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, if I look back at my own childhood, like my parents were really good at games. We played a lot of games. And I love games to this day. Like that,
Yes.
I'm very competitive. I love to learn new things. Reading the rules is actually exciting to me, so I can
Yep.
figure out how to do it. But there wasn't a lot of other play post going to school.
Yep.
But I think about that with my parents too. They both grew up on farms. There was always work to be done. It
Yep.
just was never any downtime. And you learn what you learn. And then as
Yes.
women, particularly women in our mother's generation, held so much responsibility for everything at home, right?
Yes.
And so they didn't get time to play either for themselves. And I
Right.
I just keep coming back to this is why I think I've been called to do this podcast is because we as women, even you and I who don't have children,
Yes.
we put ourselves last. We take care of the rest of our family. We take care of paying the bills. We take care of cleaning the house. We do the grocery shopping, whatever it may be. And I have a very non gendered, equitable marriage.
Yep.
It's still a lot of that stuff falls to me because I'm self employed. It's just easier for me to go to a grocery store on Tuesday morning. And
Yes.
because I'd rather spend my weekends playing, right?
Yes.
Than
Yes.
doing.
I so agree. And I'm just thinking about that. I think that our parents' generation was that kind of bridge generation, right? They had the foot in both worlds of they were moms, but they were also out in the workforce, many of them. And so they had this extra layer of responsibility, right? Because they wanted their daughters to grow up with something different than what they grew up with. And yet, the thing that was lost in that so many times was play and was self care. And I feel like play is self care. That's why I'm trying to learn how to do it again.
I think that's really interesting because one of the questions as I was brainstorming what I wanted to talk to you about was do you think anything in your life has gotten rebranded as self care or a hobby when if you did the same thing at 8 years old, you'd be calling it play?
That's interesting. I actually think the dancing thing is that because that's how I relieve stress, right? Like you said, we're entrepreneurs. I sit in front of a computer a large part of my day. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I know I need to move the energy around. And so getting up and moving my body, I think in some ways I'm looking at that as self care because I'm taking care of this sacred vessel that I have. It ends up feeling like play a lot of the times, but that's not the initial intent, I don't think. It is about self care, which is interesting that I didn't think about it that way until you asked, but I definitely think that that's true.
Do you think it would change in your mind if you called it play instead of self care?
Yes, because I think I would laugh more. And I live alone, right? So I can do whatever I want and I can act as silly as I want. And there's no one here like gonna judge me. And yet, sometimes I still am like, you're acting like a crazy woman, Kim. Because I'm wildly dancing and flailing my arms around and just being silly. And that judgment does creep in. And so I think maybe I'm going to start trying to play with that a little bit. No pun intended. Or maybe there is a pun intended. But to play with that word, I'm just viewing it from a different lens.
If I bring one thing out of this podcast, it's maybe reclaiming the word silly. I think silly is highly underrated. I'm a very silly person, but I know I have buried it so deep. Like
Yep.
the only way I've allowed silly to come out is you and I have talked about this in the past. Like there is no greater high for me than to make someone laugh.
Yep.
If I can land a joke, that's my nirvana. But that is the only time that I really let anybody else see my silly. And I think
Yes.
I even hide it from my exceptionally accepting husband who would not judge me, but
Yes.
because it was so conditioned culturally and even in my family to not be silly that I check that. And I think
Yes.
also I've gotten a recent diagnosis of being neurodivergent. And when you're that person moving through life and you always feel a little bit weird, you tone down silly, I think, because you don't want people to call it.
Right. Look, I was always the weird kid too. And I feel like I learned how to tone down my weird because I just wanted to fit in, right? And I want to circle back because you made me think of something really that I never thought about before. My dad, my biological dad, very silly guy, very silly. My parents, they got divorced when I was young. They were great co parents for the time. Like it was the 70s. There was no such thing as co parenting back then, you
Right.
know. But they were great. I mean, my mom would include my dad and his family in our birthdays and stuff. They put aside their differences for us. And at the same time, the silliness by my dad was definitely not tolerated by my mom. And so I heard you talking and I'm thinking, "Oh wow, my dad was very silly." And I saw how my mom judged that. So I definitely think that again, I was just like, "Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be too silly because then mom's going to think whatever about me or mom's going to be upset with me." But silly's so important.
And I don't know how to get there yet. Like, that's an answer I don't have, is to let that wall crumble
Yeah.
and to allow the world to see a little bit more of me. At my core, I'm weird. And
Yeah, me too.
but I've been playing it off as this very respectable, spreadsheet loving, analytical person, and I am not. At my core, I'm just not that person.
Right.
And so this is the piece. Like, every woman that I want to talk to, I think I got to bring up the silly thing. Like, what is
Yes.
it that you would do if you weren't afraid of somebody calling you silly?
Yep.
And it's funny because the next question on my list is actually, is there something you secretly love that you don't talk about because it feels silly, unproductive, or not you, in quotes, anymore?
Yeah, I don't even know. I think like I actually think that I'm so far away from that. Like I'm so out of touch with that part of myself
Yes.
that I can't even truly answer that question because I am sure that I have stuffed down or whatever or put aside parts of me that uh, are silly or are playful or aren't appropriate and I don't even realize it. I think that's the thing about conditioning, right? It's like this insidious thing where we don't even realize that it controls so much of what we do. We don't even realize we have it until we actively start to look at it. I think that's why this podcast is so important. Imagine if the world was even 5% more silly and playful. We probably would not be in the situations we're in right now in the world. And, you know, like just to be people to be able to let their proverbial hair down and just be. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can answer that question. And
Well, that's
that
tell.
doesn't sit very well with me to have to admit that because I want to think that I've done a lot of work on myself and that I'm more open. And yet, when it comes to this, I'm realizing I really do struggle with it. It's still something that I don't know how to do.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there. It's not that you're closed off to it, it's that you don't know how to do it anymore.
I
Like, you don't know.
don't.
There's a couple of things that you said that triggered a couple things for me. I realized that I have this big, beautiful cabinet sitting next to me full of art supplies. Years ago,
Mhm.
I owned an art materials store. But now to get back into it, I realized I'm trying to take that love of creativity and art and make it a side hustle, right?
Mhm.
Like, put it into taking a course on surface pattern design, which is something I'm deeply interested in. But I do want to just sit back and check myself and say, listen, is that really what you want? Or is that an excuse for you to play that will get some respect, like a
Yes.
way that will be accepted? And so I
Right.
think it's probably both, that type of
I
thing.
agree, but I think it's interesting that you bring that up. It makes me think of Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert and how
Yes.
she talks about how writing for her, like she kind of set this hard line of it has to just be about the experience of writing. Yes, she went on to be this very successful multi-million dollar author. And for her, the hard line was I'm just going to be in it. And I think that for us, especially women who are entrepreneurs, like, is that the real reason we went into this was so that we could quote unquote justify the things that felt creative and playful to us?
I think
It's a
it's a
really
both
good,
and.
yeah, it's a great question.
I think we're drawn to entrepreneurship because we are creative. But I
Yes.
also, my lovely husband, every time that one of my businesses wasn't doing well, over time, I would say, is it time for me to go get a W-2 job, which is what I called it, because he
Yep.
doesn't like when I say a real job because he keeps saying, you have a real job. I'm like,
You're
okay, should I
right.
go get a W-2 job? And he said, this sounds morbid. I'm sorry, but he's like, you'd be dead in 2 months. You
Yep.
can't, you tried the cube life. You can't do it. It doesn't
Yes.
work. So I do think that there are parts of our inborn personality that drew us to this kind of lifestyle and why we
Yes.
stay in it, even though it's really hard and sometimes the money is not great.
Yep.
But I also think that it's an acceptable way to play and to be creative. And that's a really
Yes.
interesting thing. So if people who are listening hear that and go, oh, yeah, okay, now I get it. Now I get why I made
Yes.
this choice or why I have to make this choice type of
Yes.
thing. And
Yes.
so let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about what do you think you'd be like if you did actually let yourself play more? We've hit on it a little bit, but
Well, honestly, I think I would be very silly. When you say that, I see that girl in the puddle with her hair wild, not caring. There's nothing about her that cares what's going on around her. She's literally just in that moment. And I think for me, that's, I don't know, like that's wild abandon are the words that come to my mind. Like, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
I don't know that there are any specific answers to any of these questions. I think it's just exploring it. And hopefully, when people listening hear it, they're going to have their own moment. Like I keep thinking the best solution right now is to take a little post-it note and say, be the girl in the puddle and slap it up wherever you're going to look at it every day. And everybody else is going to have something different that it means to them,
Yeah,
whether
I
it's
think,
be the girl in the puddle, be the kid who played Lego, whatever it may be. People will resonate with the idea that there is something in their mind, an image that they can immediately draw to, whether it's playing in the woods, like you said, or if it's, I heard an interview with Carol Burnett. It was on Amy Poehler's Good Hang
yep,
uh, podcast the other day, and she talked about climbing the Hollywood sign when she was a kid. Obviously, you can't do that now,
right,
but she was likening it to two things, and the first one was it probably led to her physical comedy, right? Because she
right.
just was able to do those kind of things.
Yes, yes,
And the freedom kids had, this would have been probably in the 50s, I'm going to
right.
guess. And then she also said that idea of play, like she hung out with the neighborhood kids and they climbed the Hollywood sign and they didn't have to go until the streetlights went off. And yes, different time, safer for children, or at least we thought it was safer for children.
Right.
And, but that idea that she had such wild abandon, as you just used, is
Yes.
what made her who she is, the talent she is. And she's 95 years old and still acting. I
Yeah.
think there's so much power
Well,
if you think about it.
yeah. And I'm listening to you, and the thing that comes to my mind is doing the thing without the fear of judgment, right? Like, because that's where I think so many of us get caught up. Like, we have an idea. I'll tell you this, we had a lot of snow here. I live in New England. We had a lot of snow here this winter. And I really, really, really wanted to go sledding. Okay. But I'm 56, almost 57. I have no children. I have no young nieces anymore that I can use it as an excuse to go. And I'm like, okay, people are going to look at you weird. Like, who the hell is this old lady? Not that I look like an old lady, but you know what I'm saying? Like this woman who's out here all by herself sledding. And I totally talked myself out of it. And honestly, I regret that because I know how much fun I would have had. I loved sledding as a kid. I loved it. It's great exercise. And when you first take off down that hill and you start to pick up speed, you can't help but giggle. And I wanted that experience. And I talked myself out of it because I'm like, Kim, come on. Like 56, you're going to go sledding? Like.
Well, anytime you're a single person around young kids in our culture, too, people are
Yes.
like, what is that person doing here?
Right.
But I
What's
do
the.
think that is just an excuse, right? Like
Yes.
anytime we bring that up, it's absolutely an excuse. For me, it often comes to, I have a few health issues and I'm like, oh, can you handle it?
Hmm.
But all I'm doing is talking myself out of something that would bring pure unbridled joy. Like the
Yes.
definition of play is to do something that has absolutely no purpose, right? Like
Yes.
no end result. And that's exactly what that would have been. But you're
Yes.
calling it out. So next winter, when the snow
Well,
returns,
and it's making me think 2 years ago at Christmas, I asked for roller skates. And everyone in my family, well, I won't say everyone, my nieces got together and they bought me a pair of purple roller skates because, I'm a purple girl. And I tried them on and I stood in my apartment with them and I have never used them because all I can hear is my sister's voice in my head saying, "What if you fall? You're going to break a hip. Like you're
just
too
gonna say
old.
that.
You're too old. You're too old to go roller skating." And I'm like, but I was so good at it and I loved it as a kid. I used to go to the roller rink every Friday night when I was a
Yep.
teenager, every Friday
Yep.
night. And it was, as much about hanging out with my friends, but I really loved to skate. And so I'm going to just challenge myself. And I know, like, outside of this podcast, Anne Marie, I want you to hold me accountable to ask me, have you gone roller skating yet? Because I want to do that because it's so much fun and it's that place of joy, right? Unbridled joy, laughing for
It
no
is one of
reason.
those circular things too, where the more physical activity you get like that, the safer your hips are from breaking.
Yes.
But if you're a little bit younger and listening to this, we're both in our mid 50s and there is that piece. I don't know, you cross the 50 threshold, you start to see
Yes.
some signs of age, your body starts doing a few things differently. You're going through menopause and you think, will I break a hip?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that might be a real question, but I
Yes.
also think it's a real big excuse, right?
It's definitely an excuse because the truth is that if you wear the right equipment and you know, like, I'm not just going to go wild out there at first. I'm going to be a little bit safe, but I think the whole point is just to get out there, right? It's about moving beyond the excuse and the fear, both of what might happen to us, because that's really just it really is the excuse. I'm not really scared about what's going to happen. What I'm scared about is someone seeing me and being like, "Oh my God, look at her." Like, you know what I mean? Eh,
Yes, I think we all know what you mean because we've all been.
Yes.
I mean, one of the main reasons we stop quote unquote playing is because of judgment. And
Yes.
some of it's very real judgment, you know, what's
Yes.
coming from adults in our lives, or it's coming from teachers, or it's coming from society. But you know what? I think that part of that too is as women, we can look at what are we willing to do with kids or grandkids or our nieces, nephews, those kids, and we use them as the excuse to play. So
100%.
what if would you do the exact same thing if you didn't have that excuse? Like I just think it's too easy to say that I'm going to go roller skating because my nieces want to, or
Yes.
I'm going to
Go
forgive.
to the trampoline park. I mean, I remember doing that with my nieces when they were kids, and I loved it. Like, I loved it. I had so much fun. And I
Yes.
was one of the only adults out there jumping around with the kids. And it's funny because I'm actually thinking about this. So my ex-husband, my nieces had a trampoline in the yard, one of those really nice big ones with the nets around them,
Yes.
and I played both sides of it. Yes, I would play and jump on the trampoline, but then when Craig would get up there and he would start jumping around and doing flips and acting silly, I would be like, "What are you doing? You're going to hurt yourself." And I became my mom. And so just to think about that, like I had so much anxiety watching him. And if I'm honest, I think it was more because I was jealous that he could just
Jealous.
let himself go than it was about me really worrying about if he was going to get hurt or not. Like that's what I used as the excuse. But I think I saw him and he would like be doing these crazy flips and the girls would be laughing their heads off and they were like so excited that uncle was up there doing this. And I think I was jealous if I'm being totally honest cuz I just didn't have the capacity to let myself go there.
I think that's probably a really common reaction. We've both been in the coaching world for a while,
Yep.
and the piece that comes out is the things you don't like in other people or the things you don't like in yourself.
Yep.
And but anytime somebody is doing something and I'm having some sort of reaction to it, when it's not joyful, if there's a negative reaction to it, I stop and ask myself, what's really going on here? And
Yes.
yes, there are things that people do that are heinous. We live in a world where a lot of
Yes.
that is going on right now. So that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Like, why am I unhappy that he was doing that?
Yes.
And is it he just broke his ankle and he couldn't work? Well, that's a whole different thing than
Right.
I wish I could do that too, because that's
Yeah.
a lot, I'm guessing, of what comes out. So I think one of the other things that came to me when you were talking about that is, where in our life can we give other people permission, other women,
Yes.
to play, like not hold other women back?
And I think that's why this podcast is so important, because I know for myself, like I am trying to consume more things out in the world that are affirming rather than judgmental. I try to be that place for people, to give permission without judgment, to just be you. Like, don't worry about it. If I do think you're weird, it's a compliment, not a judgment. Like, I want the weird, I want the silly. And I think it's about enough of us being willing to say that out loud and really hold the space for that, that then it becomes a movement, right? Because there is a tipping point for everything. And it's time for the world to get less serious. I mean, look, we have a lot of serious things going on and there's time for seriousness, but man, we need play now more than we have ever need. We need silliness now. We need levity more than we have ever needed it. And we need to stop letting those judgments or the fear of being inappropriate or not responsible, because that's the other thing, if you're silly, you can't possibly be responsible. you know.
It's people think it's the opposite side of the coin, when actually I think that adding a little silly absolutely increases our intellectual capacity. So if our
Yes.
intellectual capacities, then we can return to responsibility with a greater focus.
Well,
And it's
not just a greater focus, I don't think. I think we come back with new ideas.
absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
Because our brain opens up. We're not stuck in the rut of what we've always done. We're able to then think outside the box because we have more space and we have more creative capacity.
I've taken some notes as you're talking. What I just wrote down was, people think play and creativity maybe are on the same spectrum. And I think play leads to creativity,
Yes.
right? That's why kids do it.
Yes.
It allows us, and not creativity as in I'm going to go paint a picture, but creativity as in creating. I'm going
Yes.
to create a beautiful home for my family. I'm going to create a new program at work. I'm
Yes.
going to create a safe space for people. And I think what's coming out of the world we're living in right now for me is that as we diminish joy and have less of it, our creativity will decline. And the only way
Yes.
out of certain situations is to be more creative, create more,
Yes. Yeah.
be more innovative. And that brings me back to, and maybe a good place to wrap up, is so many times I have sat back and thought during this period, is writing fiction, is doing this podcast,
Yes.
is, creating beauty through art, is that too silly? I'm going to use that word. It's what came to mind, and shame on me. But is
Yep.
it irresponsible? Should
Yes.
I be doing something else? And
Right.
I sit in that for only a few minutes now before I realize, like, we cannot keep up this level of despair and not be defeated. So
Agreed.
without those affirming actions you're talking about, without laughter, without joy, without feeling people's authenticity, without play, without creativity, we don't survive this.
We don't. Yeah, I so agree. I don't know how long it's been since you had a really good belly laugh. Like really just could not stop laughing. And you know how sometimes when you get into that mode and every little thing just makes you laugh harder and it's like you can't breathe. When you come out of that, no one can touch you. You're like on fire in that moment. Your energy is amazing. And that's the energy we need to get out of all the things that we're in right now. It's almost like it's necessary. It's our responsibility to play and to be silly.
It is.
And
It
It's
absolutely is. And here comes the spreadsheet side of me again. I mean, science has proven over and over again that laughter does so much for us physically, mentally, spiritually. There is so many benefits to that kind of deep
yes,
belly laugh. And I do laugh easy, but I
yes,
have found myself doing it a little bit less as I've been getting older, and particularly, like we said, with the state of the country right now. But it is something that probably should go up on my board and
yeah.
say, where can you go and find that laughter?
Yes. How
And
can you
what,
laugh? How can have I laughed yet today?
yes, right? Live, laugh, love. Now,
Yes.
we won't get into all that. So I'm going to wrap up with a couple of questions that I think I'll
Okay.
ask everybody.
Yes.
So you may have already answered this, but I'm going to ask it again. If you could give yourself permission to do one thing just for fun, no justification required, what would it be?
I'm going to go with the roller skating because I had forgotten about that. But I'm thinking about it and it's getting nicer out and I want to do it. I just want to do it because I know I'm going to have fun doing it. And I know how good I'm going to feel about myself on so many levels when I get back from it.
Yes. And so this is a little something that I hope we can offer just a little piece of advice from everybody's different perspective at the end of each podcast. And I would like you, if you could tell a woman listening right now who's thinking, well, that sounds nice for you, Kim, but that's not for me anymore, or I don't have the time for it, or whatever their excuse may be, what would you tell them?
I mean, this feels like right up my alley because one of the things that I talk about a lot in the work that I do, the Step Into Your Magic work that I do, is about how it's so important for us. We've all heard the phrase, fill your own cup first, right? You can't pour
Right.
from an empty cup.
Yep.
And there is a little bit of kind of cheekiness about it, but also it's so very true. And what better way to fill your cup than to be playful and be silly? Because the 10, 15, 30 minutes, and I'm going to guess it's going to go longer because when you're in that place, you're in that, what they call that Kairos time where you lose track of time,
Yes.
you know, and it extends out on itself. And when you come out of that, everything is better. And you are a better person to the people around you. And you're more kind, you're more loving, and life is just better. And somewhere we all know that's true inside, but it's been hammered into us to not be selfish. So, what I would say is really challenge yourself to look beyond that selfish label and not only give yourself that gift, but give all the people around you that gift. Because when you're happy, other people are happy. It spills out.
I wrote down while you were talking that if you need a place to start, think about it as a way to give to others, because
Yes.
who's better at giving to others than women?
Yes,
We were trained to do that, and honestly, it's in us. It's
it
just in our
is.
DNA to give to others. So if
Yep.
you cannot play for yourself in the beginning, do it so that you are able to give to others. You are able to model that behavior for your kids, for your grandkids, for the people around you.
Yes.
And then when you start getting into it, start doing it for yourself, because the
Yes.
benefits, I mean, it's better than any medication you're going to get. Whatever it
Yes.
gets, like this dancing that you're talking about, for me, that I'm the same way, right? Like
Yeah.
I cannot have music on and not move my body.
Yes.
And so I have started this thing where at a certain time every morning, I get up from my desk because I too spend time in front of my computer a lot. And I just pick up around the house. So, say there was a book I left out, or I didn't fold the quilt from the couch last night, whatever it may be, but I turn the music on, I give myself 15 minutes, and yes, I'm getting a job done. The house looks
Yes.
great, but I'm
Right.
also just letting some of that amazing energy out. And
Yes.
when I come to sit back down at the computer, I'm ready to be creative again. And my entire life revolves around creativity. Like whether I'm writing a book, doing something like this, drawing something, whatever it may be. And so without that, it just doesn't work. You
Right.
and I have talked about this. We can tell when we have sat at the computer all day that, like,
Yes.
by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think everything I have done that day sucks. That is
Yes.
the worst paragraph I ever wrote. That is the worst thing I ever drew. This is never going to work, this
Yep.
podcast or whatever it may be. And it's because I've been sitting sedentary and I haven't allowed myself any time for play, for silliness.
Right. Well,
So
yeah, and that's what I was thinking as you were saying that. I'm like, what if, you know, every 45 minutes or 90 minutes, not that you have to be on a timer, you allowed yourself to get up and move that energy around? Because when you come back, this is the other thing I want to encourage is like, I'm a big journaler, so I always say like journal it, but just keep a piece of paper around, right? And mark down how you feel before, how you feel after, and keep track of it, right? Because we're also in a time and space where everything has to be proven. Like you have to have evidence to back it up, right? So if you need that, because sometimes some of us do, there's no judgment about that. It's the culture that we live in, but keep track of it. And I know you're going to find, because I just know this from my own experience. When you allow yourself that freedom, whatever it looks like, to play, to be silly, to move around in wild abandon, right? When you come back to whatever you're coming back to, you're going to see things in a different way. You're going to feel lighter. You're going to have a different perspective. And it's just going to be better all around. You can't go wrong.
If you're a to-do list person, put play on your to-do list. It'll at least give you something to check off, right?
Yes,
Like these are the things, these are the baby steps, right? Put it on your to-do list. Write down before and after how you're feeling. Give it as a gift to somebody else. Like this is not the eventual goal, but if it is what it takes you to get there, then get there.
Look, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there, right?
I agreed, which is a great lesson in and of itself. So I think we'll wrap up for today. I want to thank you for your time and for being the first play date on I Used to Be Fun.
Thanks. I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to roller skating.
A huge thank you to Kim for being my very willing guinea pig on this very first Playdate episode. I could not have asked for a better sport. And thank you for being here and listening along. I really hope something in this conversation landed for you. I know it did for me. And not just about play and creativity, but honestly about podcasting too. Turns out one of the best practices is not talking over your guest. I guess I'm still a work in progress. But here's the question I want to leave you with. What are the roller skates in your life? Kim talked about getting roller skates as an adult, full of excitement, and then never once lacing them up. And we've all got a version of that. Something we wanted badly enough to acquire, but not quite enough to actually do. So what are your roller skates? And more importantly, how are you going to lace them up? If you need a little nudge, navigate on over to annemarieboyle.com/The Wonder Project and subscribe to my free 4-week email series built around getting you back to playing and creating in small, doable, gentle ways. No pressure, just permission. Okay, that's it for this week. I'll see you next time. Now go play.